Gwyn, thanks for taking the time for being on our show.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so why don't you start by telling our listeners a little bit about your backstory, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So let's see. So I've been in the technology space in the intelligence community for 35 years, and I uh, sold a company that I had for 10 years in 2011. And it gave me the opportunity to follow my passion and interests, which has always been sort of animals, environment, and health. And I had lost a partner in 2009 to heart disease. And at the time, I remember trying to reconcile his passing at 50 years old. Was there something that I could have done that would have prevented that from happening? And in 2013, I watched the Forks Over Knives film. And if people haven't seen that, it took me, I probably saw it a dozen times before I realized that it's eat with a fork and avoid a
Hmm.
scalpel. And so there's a scalpel on the bottom of it's not that's the knife that they're talking about. So,
Right.
um, and it had Colin Campbell and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn in there, heart surgeon and cancer researcher. And I ended up reaching out to Colin Campbell. And this was after I'd spent a couple years really doing a deep dive on the what they were talking about in the film and asking him how I could help. And he shared with me that his son Nelson was in the process of filming a documentary called Plant Pure Nation. So
Hmm.
I helped the film get funded. I helped with funding for the film. And at the same
Right.
time, if you see that film, they do these 10-day dietary interventions with a lot of farmers down in North Carolina. And so I offered to do one of those in the Reston area in Northern Virginia. And Colin Campbell said he would support me, and Nelson brought food up, and I talked 45 people into making a lifestyle change just for 10 days. And I hired a nurse to do blood testing, so blood pressure, cholesterol, and weight uh,
Right.
before and after. And so people took home 2 meals. Actually, they took home 10 days worth of meals, so 20 meals. And it was frozen food, and they ate 2 meals a day. And at the end of time, what we found was that people had dropped cholesterol by an average of 20%,
Hmm.
analyzed blood pressure, and there was an average 5.5 pound weight loss, which was for a pretty healthy group. And so it was very surprising to me that quick and that intense of a outcome. I think it's 20% is more than you'll see with a statin. Um, and so people were able to get off medications, and I started getting letters from people saying this 10-day thing changed my life. And so I thought, well, there's probably a need for this. So I did the agile. If you're in software engineering, there's an agile approach to business. I signed a lease to an existing restaurant in September, um, and we opened Greenfare in November. So it was about 6 weeks from signing a place and opening the doors, and that's sort of unheard of in the restaurant space. But I sort of view us more in the health space than as a restaurant. My goal is not just to feed a meal, but to change a life. And when you came in, we're the only restaurant with a scale in the restaurant. We have a lot of books. We do a lot of events. We have big screen TV for our classes. And we've been doing this 21-day Kickstart since December of 2015. So we're in our 10th year.
Right.
We've had over 2,000 people. Um, a Washington Post reporter, Cortland Malloy, has gone through it and written maybe a dozen articles about us in the Post. Daryl Green, the football player, went through once and then came back and brought his whole family through it. So a number of celebrities, but a lot of really smart, innovative people that are willing to try something new and see what the outcome is. And I never promise it's something you have to do the rest of your life. It's just something if you do it and you see the benefits, then you have the opportunity to continue. And so it's like if you are walking around in the dark all the time, you're bumping into stuff and life isn't really that good. But when you turn the lights on, your life is so much easier. And that's sort of how I, compare the two things that, we have a lot of people that will go home and they'll stray off of the diet and come back. And so when we do our Kickstart monthly, maybe 30 to 40% of people are coming back and redoing it because they know it works.
Right. And it's
That's
one of those things that you want to keep up with. It's not just get your numbers down, but you also want to maintain them across.
Yeah, it's consistency. And I think as people, they're coming in usually trying to change diets that have been in place for decades and decades. And so 21 days usually gives people a pretty good glimpse into they sleep better, they feel better, more energy, a lot of skin conditions, allergies go away. And people feel better. Blood pressure drops, normalizes usually the first week. We can usually watch if people are on metformin or a diabetes medication, usually it needs to be adjusted down the first week. So it is a really powerful impact. And the more dramatic the change, the more dramatic the results. And
Right.
so, my own path was I stopped eating cows and lambs and pork when I was in my teens. And then I stopped eating poultry in my 20s. And initially,
Right.
it was more just because I like animals and never really liked that. So I was clinging to seafood as something that I needed to have for protein.
Yeah.
And, I remember reading a book called The Ethics of Food Choices about how fish are caught these days. And I just remember closing the book and it's like, I'm done with this industry. I'm not going to support that. And it's kind of interesting. I was listening to the radio on the way home just a few minutes ago, and they were talking about been euthanized because of the avian flu. So it's like, are people okay with that, right? Are they okay with
Yeah.
the mass killing of animals in order to get eggs, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe you come up with a flax egg, flaxseed meal and water, and you don't need these expensive things that cause a lot of animal suffering and, create these pandemics that are, brought on usually by concentrated animal populations. So it's a lot, it's for our health and I think environmental health and, from a compassion for animals standpoint, there's a lot of really compelling reasons, I think, to not only get on board, but to stick with it.
Yeah. And there are more and more documentaries coming out, talking about these things to raise awareness so that it's kind of all coming together. Hopefully more and more people can start to see the value in this type of thing and making that drastic change in their eating habits. So for someone totally new to plant-based eating, it's obviously a big drastic change for an average American who is eating animal-based protein. What would you say, or from your experience of working in this field, what are some of the small changes or small steps they can start taking in that direction of plant-based eating?
I think your suggestion of watching some of the documentaries can be, a very powerful way to start because that motivates people to try something new. And I think the more that people get into it, the better that they start to feel. If people are battling illnesses, and that's usually when we see people come in to Greenfare and do the 21-day program, we can usually watch people get off blood pressure medication the first week, uh, cholesterol medication in a couple weeks, and reverse type 2 diabetes in 3 weeks. Autoimmune disease, pretty much any organ concerns that people have resolved quickly. It's when you take out what's causing harm, then health comes back. And it's similar to the smoking campaigns. I think in the 60s, the doctors would say, don't quit, just cut back. So
Hmm.
cutting back is beneficial. You'll get some benefit from that. But when you take
Right.
out the cigarettes, that's when your body starts really cleaning itself up. And alcohol is pretty much the same way now. I think that, with the knowledge that we have now on microbiome, that the doctors that have looked at the data recognize that there's really no safe level of alcohol to consume on a regular basis that's going to be in the health field. So the quicker and more stringent you are, the not only the longer you live, but the better you feel, the better the life in your years. So that's
Right. Yeah. So
yeah.
I love the idea that it's more about focusing on what outcomes people will get from being on this journey. Like if they're gonna get rid of cholesterol meds, diabetes med, feel better, sleep better, look and feel younger, have more energy, then that outcome is worth starting and making that drastic change, which might feel, a little hard at first. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
it's surprising. I think that was the biggest surprise to me in this is how quickly people's bodies shift to a healthier outcome. So things that we were, if you take a Master's of Science class right now in the universities, you'll hear type 2 diabetes is not curable without gastric bypass surgery. And that's something that we've shown, over and over again that people can get off of the medication pretty quickly and maintain a healthful weight if they, and the way that we present it at Greenfare is usually just taking out processed food. And so it's food
Interesting. Yeah.
that is made from in a plant, and that's where it's got high amounts of salt, sugar, fat, a lot of oil, preservatives, food dyes, emulsifiers, all of the things that our body doesn't know what to deal with because it's not real food. And
Right.
food that we process ourselves. So,
Yeah.
we have air fryers and Vitamix and food processors. And so we've become, expert at processing our own food now. So the more processed, the less nutrient value that food is going to have. So if you're making a sauce, that's fine. But if you're putting your main ingredients in a blender, then you're destroying the fiber and the slow, wonderful path that it takes through your GI tract where you're absorbing nutrients and you're sending something really quickly through your system. So we usually advise against smoothies or things that are going to be heavily processed food. And then the third
Right.
category is food that's biologically processed food. And that's where a chicken, a cow, a pig eats corn or a grain, and their body adds things to it that cause harm to ours. So trans fatty acids, heme iron, IGF-1, TMAO, all of those things, when you get those from another source,
Hmm.
increase our all-cause mortality. So the more that you can take out these three types of processed food, the quicker people's path to recovery.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think it's also eliminating some of the negatives like the processed foods and things like that make a big chunk of the difference as well.
Yes, absolutely. And that's sometimes we'll see people go on like a whole foods diet where they're still incorporating animal products and they'll get better just by taking out the first category of food that I mentioned, food from the food industry, just because it's gotten so egregious with the amount of salt, oil, and sugar that is in those things. And then we had one lady that she was in the hospital for weeks and they couldn't figure out what was going on with her. And she got determined that she had a extreme allergy to any kind of artificial sweetener. And if it's less than
Interesting.
a gram, it doesn't need to even be put on the food label. So she couldn't buy anything from a package or eat out at restaurants because it would send her back to the hospital. And
Interesting.
so, it's cultivating that trust with our customers that, we buy 100% of our products are organic from local farmers. So that increases the nutrient density as well as the decrease the environmental footprint. And it's sort of eating at the right time, the right foods at the right time. Um,
Yeah, the timing the matters too, like eating early dinners, is I guess one of the big principles of the whole concept. What are usually the timings that are recommended with your Kickstarter program?
so we follow the science and we look at the big data sets and where people, for example, the blue zones. I think you probably heard
Yeah,
of Loma Linda, people there on average in the United States, California, live 10 years longer than the rest of the population. And they don't smoke, they don't drink, and they don't eat animal products. So if
right.
you live 10 years without taking any pills, all you have to do is eliminate those three things, then that's a really amazing promise. But with the meal timing, there's a lot of research now in longevity research where Walter Longo and from the Longevity Institute in California, David Sinclair has a book called Lifespan, Peter Attia in his book Outlive. They're all getting money from the billionaires who want to extend their life. And
Sure.
what they found is 16 hours is sort of an optimal fast time. So um, having 16 hours roughly where you're abstaining from food, you're drinking water or tea, with water being the drink of choice, but abstaining from food. And then 2 meals a day. So two larger meals with a heavier meal being in the morning, within
Hmm.
2 hours of waking up. And then the second meal 4 to 5 hours later, but finishing eating before it gets dark. And so that consistency is really beneficial because your body adjusts to it usually within a couple of days. And people
Right.
in our program report not feeling hungry. And once they get on that schedule, we always, if you're going, don't pass up a social engagement, with your friends, because that's one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine is social interaction, but eat before you go. And then when you're out, have a salad or some sparkling water or kombucha or something that is not going to interfere with your ability to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that aspect of social engagement because food is all nutrition and health, but it's also a big part of people's social life. And then, like we talked about, it's one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, staying active and healthy for longer, happier people. We don't want to just live long, but live happy too. So good to know that you can still go out with your friends and still enjoy time in company, good company, and eat healthy at the same time and do your best at
Yeah,
the same time.
absolutely. So we base our principles on the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which if doctors are getting accredited in that field now, which is fundamentally nutrition, principles of nutrition, sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night,
Right.
exercise, 30 to 60 minutes a day with aerobic and strength bearing exercise being really important. And then stress management, and then also avoidance of risky substances and social interaction. Those are the 6 pillars. And we really focus on 4 of those in the program. We've actually got some now we do a couple slides on alcohol and drinking, consuming alcohol consumption. And then also on the GLP-1 drugs that is kind of taking the market by storm, I think, with a lot of people wanting to get a shot that's going to give a miraculous weight loss cure, which in effect, when they eat fewer calories, they still have to make a dietary change because if you're going to have a poor diet and eat less of that, then your nutrient density goes down quicker. Um,
Right.
so people end up being told to eat high fiber diets, which are basically plant-based diets. Animals have no fiber, so
Yeah.
uh, they're really going to end up in the plant-based camp one way or another.
Yeah. So all roads lead back to that.
That's right.
So how could someone who's kind of in a rest in Herndon, Northern area, how can they get started with getting a taste of plant-based eating with Greenfare? What are the different avenues that they can approach you guys with?
Yeah, so I'm thrilled that you're going to be doing a talk in a couple of weeks. I think it's you're going to be at Greenfare on February 12th, and so we'll look forward to having you there. And that's something that we offer constant education for people that come in. We have greenfare.com. We have a list of events that we have, and we're constantly running a 21-day Kickstart program. So my thought usually is for people to come in and have a meal and experience the environment. It's a really beautiful place, and people come in and they say their blood pressure drops just walking through the front door. They can take home a couple meals. We have ready to go meals, and we have a meal plan. If people are trying to save some money, they can order 7 meals at a time and swap out ones that they don't like. And then we've had people do that for months, and then they say, okay, I'm ready for the next step, which is a 21-day Kickstart. And that's sort of when people really have the dramatic changes. And a lot of it, I think, is where people are on their health journey. I think you probably
Right.
encounter people when they have, pain, or they're facing surgery, or sort of in that camp. And when people come in at that level, then we try to get them in Kickstart as quickly as possible, because we've helped people avoid knee replacement surgeries, gallbladder surgeries, uh, rheumatoid arthritis, which could be like hand and neck surgeries. So the John Hopkins did a study a number of years ago, and the third largest cause of death is the medical industry, where people either get a procedure they didn't have to have, or they have a reaction to a medication. And so our goal is working with doctors like yourselves who are more enlightened, that your lifestyle makes a difference, and you have the power and the hope to do a recovery without going through these more extreme paths.
Yeah, I love it. I love that there is an alternate path now, more and more enlightened for people to take to get rid of these medications. And it's as easy as, by coming in and just trying out a meal and then going from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to add for our listeners, Gwen?
There's, I think, the 3 movies that I mentioned, Forks Over Knives. I'm one of the executive producers of a film called The Game Changers. That's got Arnold Schwarzenegger and a lot of the athletes. So if you have people that are healthy, but they're athletic and performance oriented, like either running or weightlifting, bodybuilding, then the plant-based diet can actually accelerate performance. And then there's another film called What the Health, and that resonated with our Hispanic crew when we showed that, because it shows about it's primarily about people that are really sick and they get dozens and dozens of medication, and how they're able to unwind that when they start making these dietary changes. So it's a very close-in look at a couple stories of people that get on this path of starting one medication and then more medication for side effects, and then more intense doses. And it's how do you start to unwind that. And I love that you're aligned with that, and we definitely look forward to partnering with your clients that are interested in reversing the root cause of all of these things, which is inflammation.
Yeah, I love it. I did not know you were involved with the Game Changers documentary, because I do remember that the year it came out. And I do remember even like a few people telling me that after watching the documentary, it had changed their mind so much. And at least at the start of the new year, they were headstrong about switching to plant-based diet. I don't know how much that was sustained, but it did have a big impact when it did come out.
It was pretty clever. James Wilkes targeted men, with the traditional male role models, and I think the segment on ED had a very strong impact on men. So that edged a lot of males into a thinking that it's all aspects of health that can be improved.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. Well, thanks for taking the time to be with us on the show today, Gwen, and looking forward to our upcoming talk too in February.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Turner. That I really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to seeing you then.